Hi, David Matthew.
Hi, Allison. My goodness. I feel like it's been forever, even though it hasn't been forever, but I feel like it's been a minute since
It's
I
been a
chatted.
while.
Yeah, since before you went overseas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you?
Hmm?
How are you? I mean, we've been texting, let's just be clear.
Yeah, no, not like out of touch, but we haven't, hopped on and done a chat in a minute. It's so
There's a
nice.
lot going on.
Yeah, how so?
The personal family stuff to attend
Oh, yeah. Well,
to.
sure, but yeah, there's always something going on.
Um, I don't know that I agree with that. And then when you said how so, there's tons of stuff like the solar flares last week and the new
Someone
moons.
had, sorry to cut you off there, but I was like, someone emailed me just, it was a question about a meditation, and she asked me how has have your personal, have your personal meditations been affected by the solar proximity? And it was like, this was just someone I had like, we don't really, we talk more about, I guess, more mundane sorts of things regularly, and but she knows that I practice meditation and teach meditation and stuff. So it was just one sentence, and I was like, I mean, I thought for a minute, and then I thought,
Good.
I think probably you should ask Allison because what I said was, I said, I mean, I ended up talking about, my energetics now and what I've been noticing as far as, particularly in the past few months, just a noticeable increase in the number of people interested in meditation, interested in trying, in
Better than that.
starting, in getting
Hallelujah.
started. Um, but then I said, as far as I said, I'm not. I've been aware of my energetics and other people's energetics, but I'm not so, I wouldn't say I'm tuned into the planetary, solar, celestial energetics so much. Although I will say, and I imagine you have a thought or two on this, but I will say that, um, speaking about, just kind of like the personal matters and stuff like that. I did a healing. I've been doing healing prayers for folks, and I walked upstairs last night on my way to bed, and I went to close my blinds for a moment, and I looked out, and there was a star, and I didn't look up which one. I didn't pull out my night sky thing and look up which one, but it was so clear in the sky, and I found myself doing those same prayers while addressing the above,
Brilliant.
while addressing
Brilliant.
that particular star.
Perfect.
So that was an interesting.
So I bet it was this star. This is the talisman for Jupiter, and this is the old Kabbalistic. You can see the Hebrew around the side. This
Yeah.
is the ancient astrology understood to be the alignment that beckons Jupiter. I looked it up the other night. Um,
You're not wrong.
I
I mean, I was going to go in detail and then I decided not to, but as far as be, those what you just showed me, those very thin rays coming out, that was one thing I noticed, and I didn't actually count them. But sometimes a star
yeah,
is just twinkling, right?
yeah.
And sometimes a star, whether it's a planet or a star, but sometimes you look up and there are there are a very specific number of rays coming out. And it looked very much like what you just showed me.
Yeah, I stepped out with my when I it was one of the first nights back. And I expect to be more connected, even more so than I already am to the cosmos coming back from the retreats I just led in England and then
Yeah.
Egypt. There is like even a specific temple I took us to that has the whole ceiling dedicated to the Egyptian understanding of astrology, the ancient Egyptian understanding of astrology and all the signs. Like you could see the scales for my sign Libra, you could see the goat for the Capricorn. Without going down that trail about how brilliant the detail done on the temples in ancient Egypt are.
Okay.
Um, Jupiter, so one of my first nights back, I looked it up and it was Jupiter with my night sky thing. And Jupiter's in retrograde right now. And I've had a personal connection with Jupiter. Um, I've been standing under the night sky. It's how I've gotten a ton of my downloads, so to speak. And I don't typically use that word download to describe an intuitive envelope or packet of information that I then have to, through meditation and taking the proper space, integrate into my conscious frontal lobe
Hmm.
so I can understand the energetics I just received. I've been doing it since 2011, since having that radio show I had weekly for 2.5 years and learning what special times we were in. That I've then proceeded to become, two of my full books are about it, and then to proceed to guide people through it. I spent so much time connecting with the cosmos. So that's like a real linear, more rational understanding. One of the other things that came through when I found myself just nightly standing under the night sky, uh, connecting with it and looking for information from the stars themselves, not like just considering it as the cosmos, the heavens, God, or the or divine divinity, but um, as I've had this Activate Your Magic program for I don't know how many years, and two of the three monthly offerings are the sacred clearings and activations for the new moon and the full moon. And so that has me also researching the astrology of the lunations and then creating the clearings and activations based on them. And I've kept track with, like, as I have these senses energetically standing under the cosmos, um, and these perceptions of, okay, what part of 2012 to 2032 humanity's greatest evolutionary leap are we at? What stage are we at? Um, I have looked to astrology um, to help explain the senses I've had astrologically, and it typically matches, which has been, a great learning curve for me with my intuitive development. And as I was watching this at one point, probably around like 2014 or 15, I was like, oh my God, Alison, duh. It was like one of those duh moments because the crown chakra of the chakra column,
Hmm.
which we work with in meditation and in our sun salutations and our yoga, various yoga poses, but always in sun salutations. When you come up from forward bend, right? Sun salutations.
Uh-huh.
The crown chakra, just, FYI, those of you who aren't David and I, who aren't yoga practitioners, every single yoga pose is around the chakras. It's designed to open the chakras. That's why you leave yoga class feeling so great. So I was like, Alison, every petal of the 1,000 petals that are the most complex chakra of the seven chakra system, the crown, connects to a planet. You have been deepening your yoga practice. You have been deepening your meditation practice. It is a natural evolutionary aspect of being a regular yogic practitioner. And one of the other things that's happening right now is we are going more galactic. Now, let me bring that down to everyday existence. Wall Street Journal had the full moon on it a couple of years back, and I felt that was a marker. What There are more, like, you could look up the Schumann resonance. That's a side topic. Let me leave that to the side. But we are being geared to look to the cosmos more as part of the segment we're in the 2012 to 2032 window. I could go really out there with this and say something like there is a lot of support I've perceived coming to us from different planets. Like one of the stone circles I take students to in England, the central stone connects and points to Pleiades. Pleiades is known as the Seven Sisters. It's known as a healing star. Um, I mean, we could go down a long path with this. I don't think that this is the best use of our conversation right now because I feel like you just wanted a little bit of an understanding. The solar flares, the sun has been it's been closer to us, yes, but it's also been more active. And there's a measurement called the Schumann resonance that in part measures the reaction on planet Earth from what's happening cosmologically or astrologically. And so people react with maybe more fatigue, maybe more spaciness. Um, and those are just two really off the top of my head reactions that happen when the sun's closer and we're receiving more solar flares. And the Schumann resonance measures humanity's reactivity on planet Earth emotionally and therefore energetically. So on 9/11, it spiked. It was measured on 9/11, and around the world, the horror on that, it spiked. So a lot of people have been over the last year or three starting to tune more into monitoring the Schumann resonance as we enter more of our unity time and recognize we're a collective and open up more to the galactic, the cosmos, the planets, the influence, because we are living in the energies we're living in. You may say a certain something a certain way to your wife under certain planetary influences where you would just let it go under other planetary influences. So it's very subtle. That's why it's at the crown chakra and there's 1,000 petals. The influences that are beyond our own localized consciousness that we're then living in as the greater vibrational backdrop are what they are in great part because of the energetics coming at us from the various planets and the alignments they have, unconscious and subconscious influence. Does that help?
No. I mean, it helps to I don't mean no, but I mean if I was more interested in the in if I found I've just never found myself looking at astrology in particular as immediately helpful in my daily life or in my spiritual and
I'm not talking about
meditation
astrology.
practice.
I'm not
Well,
talking
I
about
mean, as far as
predictions.
like being aware, I mean, so for me, as far as I take it is I'm aware that there's stuff going on here beyond this body. I'm aware that I'm aware that when I mean, I'm in the Northeast, when I look out and I have to remind myself that there's a sun on the other side of those thick clouds. And I have to remind myself that there's a
Sorry.
moon and stars on the other side of those thick clouds. And when I'm standing outside, and you can kind of like get yourself like, and you watch the sunrise. Well, the sun's not rising, the earth is moving. And so you can stand for a moment and be like, I mean, you can take those things into account, but I don't think for me, and I'm not suggesting that you are like walking around, actively, consciously engaged in planetary interaction and celestial interaction. However, when you look at, I don't know, the first time that I read the autobiography, um, I mean the autobiography of a yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, it was, I know now that I was just receiving what was in there more than I was like reading each word and understanding how you would typically read a book and understand because so much of it was so new. So
Yeah,
much of it was so new as
yoga.
far as, basically, the Indian yogis and saints and miracles. And there's a whole chapter, and there's a whole chapter in there that goes into um, a bit of the effects of the galaxy, inside, and this planet that we're on and beyond. And so it wasn't until years later, when I read it again, when I was really ready to read it, that I started ready to read it in a different way,
Thank you.
more than just receive it.
Take it in more, understand it more. Yeah.
um, that and even still,
Yep.
I mean, I just sit there and read it just to enjoy receiving what's in there. So all this to say that we can be aware that there's more. I mean, I can just speak from personal experience. I can be aware that there's more stuff going on here than just this body. and at the same time, just allow that to enhance my love of being here. And I can sit down and when I sit down to practice meditation, I'm practicing a meditation technique and I'm coming to it from a place of devotion and desire for self-realization. You know, that's I mean that's where it's coming from. So when someone, you know, asks me about something celestial, about the sun, I I don't know. It does. It's not that it doesn't resonate. It's just I don't take it consciously into anything that I practice. Um, and as far as like, I mean, as far as, and I don't want to like go down the road of the chakras or you know now, but if I mean that's certainly being aware of those energy centers within us as we practice. I mean, there are wonderful meditations that can be done there, and that's um, that those are I don't know. I did one somewhat recently, or started doing them somewhat recently, where they're focused on on the elements and the elements. So I don't know. I found the elements where it's
Earth, root,
earth and
water,
water
sacral,
and
fire,
fire
third
and
air.
yeah, and air and ether, and that I found that very much right here, like very much like I can close my eyes, right? And I can do those meditations and I feel like I can tune in um, and feel in a way that I don't know. Thinking about them in terms of planets, at least at this point, you know, in my, you know, in my development, you know, it doesn't, um, it's not quite the same, I guess.
David, you know, the one time in my life, you know, you have a good, strong sense, I think, of your sister's intellect and the seeker in your sister that in part was responsible for taking me to Asia for 10 years.
Yeah.
That is a not common choice. And not going there and because and still being a foreigner in their land, doing everything that we still do over here, over there, instead immersing myself and exploring and asking questions and studying. And nonetheless, in my early 20s, I was in San Francisco and I had a book on the subtle energy understanding. It was yogic wisdom,
Hmm.
and it was getting into the subtle energy bodies. Now, I had already practiced yoga. It was one of the electives I took my freshman year in college, and I had started to meditate myself. I hadn't yet started to teach it. So that's why I had this book. I wasn't doing anything with energy medicine yet. And this is the one time in my entire life, considering that mom took Alan and I to the library every day after school as we were growing up. And my bachelor's is in English literature, and my first teaching position in the public school was reading teacher. There's the one book in my entire life I looked at and said, I'm not ready for this yet, and put it down.
Right on. Yeah.
The yogic wisdom, the vault of the progression of understanding and dipping your toes for what you need at the time, and then where that takes you and evolves to, if you allow it to, it's the spiritual path.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's phenomenal, the volume of understanding and how subtle and deep and expansive at the same time it goes.
Yeah, what you're referring to is such, I mean, it's such profound advice, right? Because as soon as you start following that,
That
I
was
was
a good movement.
responding to, I was responding to a meditation student who reached out. Just he was wanting more, some more, more than you know, guided group stuff, more you know, kind of instruction, that sort of thing. Um, and one of the things that he kind of that he just said, it was something like, I don't know exactly what I need or want. And what I
Perfect.
found
It's
myself
surrender. Love hearing
yeah, yeah. And what I found myself responding to him with was just that's that. It's like you want to use the word vague, but it's not really vague because it's real. It's a real sense of seeking something, of wanting something. And so what happens is we know that we want something more. We know that there is something more, but then our rational intellectual our rational minds conditioned toward the intellect, because we can't put a label on it or define it in any specific way, we dismiss it. And then it comes back, and then we dismiss it until at some point we stop dismissing it or we don't dismiss it. So the one thing that I was responding to is I kind of acknowledged that what was happening in one sentence and said, so good on you for not dismissing it. Let's go. Right. Um, and
Totally.
so
Especially a
when
man following his intuition. That's
but
fantastic.
but then you answer that. So now you start. So now you've stopped dismissing it. You start taking steps, right? And now you start to dabble, and then the intellect comes back in, because not back in. It's always there. The intellect
Thank
jumps
you.
back in, like, okay, I need to understand everything. Like I need to just get it, right? And um and that's so that desire for understanding, which is important, like so that's like a different path of yoga, right? There's there's the yoga of wisdom, there's the yoga of devotion, there's the yoga of action. There are these, paths of yoga, one not better than the other, or just but that's like the yoga of wisdom. That's not necessarily the same thing as intellectual understanding, right? So when you go and you go to want to understand everything intellectually, and then you come across something like, yep, I'm not ready for this, that's perfect. Like one of the most comforting things that I found, because I think maybe I was in that place like, wow, I'm really interested in okay, I get that I don't know anything. So now I just want to know everything, right? So you get to a point, you practice yoga and meditation, yoga asana for a while. I get to a point where I take a yoga teacher training. And one of the things that came up during that yoga teacher training was, I still remember her saying this, just go with what you're interested in. Go with what makes you curious. Like, so maybe that's yoga philosophy. Maybe that's the anatomy of yoga poses, like really going right all into alignment and asana. Maybe it's meditation in those sorts of aspects. Maybe it's so. I just found that very grounding and comforting. It's like, okay, this is what I'm drawn to right now. So let me keep allowing myself to be drawn into that and not necessarily be thrown off course by wanting to know everything. Like every time there's a certain amount of, I've noticed this with my new meditation students, that there's um and we've talked about this before, kind of that spiritual shopping that's out there. um and a certain amount of that is necessary, right? I mean, you gotta try this and try that and look at this. But when you find something that resonates or something that draws you in, I don't know, I've just personally benefited from, okay, that was my personal experience. I'm like, and this is actually how we're instructed that this happens, right? We're sent teachers, we're sent various books, we're sent teachers to kind of satisfy where we need to go. And then at some point, it starts to narrow to a specific set of teachings, if you will, either a specific teacher or a path of teacher or a path of teachings that that you find just really resonates, that you're really drawn to. And then at that point, a lot of dabbling outside of that, I think, can be counterproductive. It, it doesn't mean that you're not aware of other things or see other things or whatnot, but that's been my experience.
I like what you said when follow what interests you. I find um, it requires a lot of trust and yielding and redirection off of honoring the intellect for being the all-knowing thing that guides us through our life and gains us the success.
Mm.
which is the old paradigm, and shifting into allowing for what I've come to call whole brain consciousness, where I've called it magical, logical magic. For example, um, the Chinese, and one of the ways I explain this is the ancient Chinese and the yogic culture both believe that the spirit resides in the heart. I was just saying this on last night's Magic Manifestation and Money Flow call. So your intuitive guidance, I think I've seen, not I think, I've seen a lot of people expect intuitive guidance to be something like rocking, riveting.
Yeah, this just came up in my Sunday meditation just this past week, this exact topic.
Yeah, and I mean, I have brought back an intuitive development webinar that I created a few years ago because we're in another stage where a whole new group of awakening people who've awakened are into the intuitive development because we're in the phase of the 2012 to 2032 where we are meant to be more connected, therefore more aligned, therefore more connected, therefore more not only listening to our guidance, but where I wanted to go today when I was thinking about this was then creating from that, the creativity that results. But let me
Oh
back
yeah.
up. So it can be as simple as your heart feeling lighter when you think about something. And so follow that. And another way to say it is when you feel enthusiastic. Another way to say it is when you feel inspired.
Yeah.
But one of the errors, and I was just talking about this too
Which is
last night.
different from excitement. This was something that I was talking with Elena not that long ago, as far as and parsing out the difference. Sorry to, I just wanted to clarify that, as far as like enthusiasm, because we get all confused about intuition and intuitive guidance. Um, but so when you said enthusiasm, I just wanted to that's different from like this kind of jittery excitement that we get when something's brand new. I remember one of the things that was most helpful to me was when Swami Kriyananda described that feeling, that intuitive feeling as a calmness in your heart.
It can, I feel like that's after you follow your guidance. And maybe what he meant by calmness in your heart is more like you're not doing the inner debate where you're doubting or you're resisting what the guidance is telling you to do, but you have a calm acceptance of that trust and that you've learned to have to yield to your intuitive guidance. Because the thing that I was going to complete that with is just how much people expect intuitive guidance to be what they want to hear.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's such a foundational misunderstanding. And I speak to this in a lot of my speaking to the general public, and then work with my people where they're at with their intuitive development when they come in to work with me. And one of the other most common misunderstandings I feel like is that people are looking, they haven't purified their ego mind enough so that when they are checking to see, do I want to join that? Do I want to go to that? And they're doing it intuitively. They're looking for like this. And you and I you've asked me about this before. I don't really know what a whole body yes feels like.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And
Uh-huh.
that, or somebody else is saying like, well, I checked in with my sacral and it doesn't feel aligned. Or and it's
That's
like,
wicked. That whole body thing, that's wicked confusing.
I know, and you don't go to the sacral for your intuition. I mean, I could get complex here and say, okay, so from Qigong, that's where the Dantian is, and that's where the Chinese think the
Mhm.
soul exists. Um, and so perhaps you get intuitive hits from there, but that's actually the blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go there. What I'm getting at is, I find that when people haven't done enough purification of their ego mind, whether that's through clearings and activations or meditation, they project their egoic desires into their interpretation intuitively so that the intuitive interpretation yields what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Because the spiritual path is meant to expand us, right? And grow us, right? And,
Mhm.
for a seed to break through underneath Earth and then pop up above Earth with its shoot to then flower, there's a bit of like power needed
Yeah.
to like push up through, So it's interesting the convenience of the egoic interpretation and the egoic application to intuitive guidance. It's pretty funny.
Yeah.
So what do you
Yeah.
think, David, about I mean, there's two things I want to ask you about, and I'm going to let you choose. I want to ask you about innocence and about creativity.
Oh, well,
Which
those,
direction do you want to go? You choose.
well, I got to scoot here in just a few minutes. So I think we have time for one, which is what you asked me. So that's good. Um,
Thanks for clocking that.
yeah. Oh, I like innocence. That feels, yeah, that feels sweet.
Thought you might. Okay.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, I'm not
I
talking.
like this game.
Spin the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah.
What spiritual topic would you like to explore? Oh my God, that's a good idea. Speaking of creativity.
Oh,
Um,
God. Okay, but I'm not putting any spinners on this thing. Maybe we'll get one of those old school like Game of Life or Monopoly didn't use a spinner, and we'll just
Willow
go for
Fort.
it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm actually sitting here thinking about the creation of what we're talking about right now. Um, so innocence is not, I don't mean it when I'm asking about this in the way of like the Zen saying of beginner's mind, best thought, first thought. It's
Okay.
actually first thought, best thought, which is a way of talking about intuition and ego uh, interference. I'm talking, what do you think of when I say innocence in the context of evolving yourself beyond the old versions of yourself?
Hmm. Uh,
Thank
we might have to do a part two because I don't think I have all the time I want to talk about this right now. But I will say that I think of Divine Mother. I think of the aspect of the feminine aspect of God as the comforter in terms of it's like when you talk about forgiveness, like you've done wrong, and may I be forgiven. Um, Yet the divine, and however you want to conceptualize the divine, whether that be Divine Mother, whether that be a Jesus or a Krishna or Heavenly Father, or however you want to
Allah. Yep.
conceptualize that, was that you were never condemned in the first place. It takes me right to
That's
that
a good go.
that I, you, and I, and everyone we know and everyone we don't know are just as much a child of God as Jesus. Is just as much just as we all are. And so we're all. And so think about if in any a parent, like I think about my daughters, like in particular, like when they're little, like when like they're like 3 years old and they make a mistake, they do something bad, right? And they know that they did. Like all you want to do is let them know that it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I still love you. Is you didn't do, and just all you want to do is let them know that they're innocent. You made a mistake. Um, and so that sort of approach to ourselves, like to apply that level of pure innocence to ourselves when like, okay, I made a mistake. I had an experience when I was doing a talk at a university last week, and I was doing something that I kind of always do, but it affected one student in a way that it's never affected them before. And I realized she taught me such a lesson about maybe I'll tell you in detail another time, but she taught me such a lesson about how to teach differently this particular aspect. And then afterwards, I was going through it in my mind and going through it again. And so when we do something that we wish we had done differently, is one way to say it, we don't apply that same level of not even forgiveness, but never having been condemned, that level of innocence to ourselves at all. Yet that's what's available to us. It's who we are. It's what we are.
Innocence.
Yeah.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
interesting. That's where you went with it.
That's where I went with it. Um, I think I think we're out of time. Maybe we'll do this again another time.
Maybe.
Because I feel like you wanted to go somewhere else. I'll be very curious.
No, no. I genuinely asked you that question.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's where I went with
I mean,
it.
I have different ideas about it, yeah, but I was genuinely wanting to hear. That's
Okay.
why I asked.
Okay. I am so glad that you're back closer. I'm on this side of the ocean now. I know we're still states away, but you know, here it's so lovely to have you back um, on this ground, North America.
Yeah, it's good to be back on
Yeah.
this ground, this
Okay.
gorgeous earth of ours.
Okay. Well, we'll talk again soon then, yeah.
In blessings for all that's coming this weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. I love you so much.
I love you too.
Bye.
Bye.